This video covers Mobile Station with software version 3.1.12. You find that by hitting Shift and then the wrench here in the square. Then you hit the button next to MS2 information, and here you see the version number. So the functionality shown in this video might work on newer versions than this, but may not work on older. Hello and welcome to Model Train Fun. Today I'm going to talk about how to add a non-Märklin locomotive to the Mobile Station 2 using the DCC protocol. Please be aware this does not mean that any DCC locomotive out there can be added or used, I should say, on the Märklin tracks. The Mobile Station 2 is actually capable of controlling all the locomotive, but then it would be on the tracks that matches. Locomotives that can be supported on Märklin tracks and used on the Mobile Station 2, you can typically find from manufacturers such as Brava, Pico, Roco, but also many others. If I look at this Roco locomotive here, so what typically Brava, Roco and Pico does, they mark it with a little symbol here that actually says it's AC, and that's typical the way you can recognize it. But do make sure that you get a locomotive that's compatible with the Märklin tracks, right? So in order to be compatible, it needs to have the slider. I have already shown in other videos how easy it is to add a locomotive that has MFX because it basically auto-checks it and loads the information into the Mobile Station 2. For other locomotives, unfortunately, it can be a little of a detective work. And the key is actually experience, or go search on the net. How have other people done it? Search on YouTube, see if you can find anything. So for example, this particular locomotive here I have, when I add that using the standard Märklin protocol, I only get access to some of the functions in there. The locomotive actually has 24 functions, but if I use the Märklin protocol, I will only get access to the light and functions 1 through 7. So that's why I'm choosing to add this one as a DCC locomotive. Now, the first thing we need to do is find the manuals because we need to figure out and find hints for three things. What is the address of the locomotive when we receive it? What is the list of functions in the locomotive? And any kind of hints we can find for how to program it, how to add it, so hints about the decoder and hints about adding it to Märklin control devices such as the Mobile Station 2. So let's open this locomotive. The first thing we find is this manual here. That's the operating instructions. If we look at this one here, we have the English section. It doesn't really tell us anything of what we need to do. There's other useful information in there about maintenance and so on. Okay, we look through it. More about maintenance. Something about the pins on the decoder. Multiple languages. So this manual is not really useful for what we need to do now. And as you see, if I just look in the box here, it seems like there are no other manuals. However, many manufacturers actually put the extra information somewhere else. So let me just take the locomotive out first. So Roco, for example, likes to hide it underneath the Flamingo. This is where we find the useful manuals. So we got two manuals in here that are extremely useful. One is for the decoder itself, so the Roco sound decoder, operating instructions, excellent. The other one we have here is, well, it says Loc Funktionalitäts Datablatt. So that's another one we need to look at. Okay, so let's see if we can find useful information. So here is the English section. And actually the first useful information it shows here is the address. So no matter what protocol it has, it can show, it's by default address 3. It also shows us that it can use 7 protocols, DCC, NMRA, and Motorola. Motorola is actually the Märklin one. However, we're going to do the DCC. And the good thing here is to read through all of these instructions to find more hints. So the other hints that are interesting in here is the functions. So here you see the function keys. Yeah, there's light. It's usually always on F0. F1 is driving noise, so that's engine noise, and so on. So it's useful to go through these because all of these functions we want to add to the mobile station. All right, so that was the first useful manual. The sound decoder here. Now here comes some of the detective work because we need to try and dig out information we can find in here. We again find the English instructions. It actually repeats. It's address tree. We can use it in DCC and Motorola. The other thing here, it says here, reset. Okay, so in order to reset, we have to put an 8 into CV8. Okay, actually it says here, 8 in CV8 or 8 in the register 8. So 8 in register 8 is if it's Motorola, 8 in CV8 is if it's DCC. So now we know how to reset the locomotive. Anything else interesting in here? Well, the good thing down here is that we can use it in braking sections as well from Märklin, and it's compatible with that. That's good. Analog operations I don't care about. DCC operations, okay, we're actually going to operate it as DCC. So down here are some CV values. They are good if we need to tune it. So need to store that in back of our head. There's more here. Something about the functions and so on. Okay. I go a little further. It actually says here, programming the Märklin Mobile Station, or programming with the Märklin Mobile Station. So actually what it suggests here is if you wanted to use it as a Märklin or using the Märklin protocol, use the addresses that are by default or use the default locomotives in the mobile station 36330 or 37962. But as I told you before, if I do this, the locomotive, I can't use all the functions of the locomotive or of the decoder. Even worse, in my opinion, when I fiddled around with just using the Märklin protocol, it tended to get stuck in the F6. The F6 is the, well, let me show it what it was. The F6 here is a shunting gear with shunting lights. So for some reason, when I did many things in the Motorola protocol or the Märklin addressing or Märklin protocol, it ended up in that one. And then, for example, you can see it has shunting lights permanently on. So I couldn't figure out how to turn on and off lights and so on. So it got a little confusing. All right, we go back to this one here. Because the other thing that can be useful to look at is possible settings in Motorola. So this is for the old digital operation in Märklin. So one thing that's really interesting here is, so this is for the old control station 6021. See, if you want to do a reset, it says how to do that on the control station. We don't care about that because we know it's CV8. You have to put an 8 in. However, it says here, switch off power to the rails. Now, this is important. So many decoders have different ways of getting programmed. Typically, when you update and give values, they will blink in a certain way and or move or just slightly jump on the rail so you can see that it's actually receiving programming information. But many decoders has some kind of feature where you need or something, I should say, you need to do in order to make it permanent. So this one here, it seems like we need to switch off the power and then turn it back on. Other decoders, you actually need to change the direction, maybe once, maybe twice, or something like that. So there's typically something in the manual about this. Not easy to find, okay? So this is the detective work. So that's why we need to do that. But for this one here, we know it's power off. The other thing we have to remember also is how easy is it to power it off. So I actually saw on the Roco website, it said something like it had a capacitor in there. So it means it has some kind of stay alive. So as you know, the stay alive function will actually charge while the locomotive is driving, and then if it loses contact with the tracks, either because it's dirty or the tracks are dirty or the wheels are dirty, then it will not be impacted as much because the capacitor then will discharge. However, that creates a problem for our programming, because it means if for this particular decoder I have to power off, I have to remember to power off for so long that it actually discharges and really also turns off the decoder. Typically it holds a charge for about a couple of seconds. So if we power off and then wait for 5 to 10 seconds and then turn the power back on again, we should be good. So now is the time for the experiment. We have the locomotive on the track. Now we need to start experimenting. And here I have to give you a warning. Be careful because what we're going to do in this video could make your locomotive completely inoperable. We need to experiment in order to figure out how to actually connect to the decoder and how to change settings in the decoder. So we could end up doing something that makes your locomotive not even wanting to drive and so on. The good thing is most decoders actually have a reset function, and we know for this one here we saw in the manual we could reset. How was that? Put the value 8 in CV8. So we can do that. Furthermore, which I actually didn't show, was that in the manual you are actually, the default values are also given. So if we completely screw up, we can always get back to it. But you could also end up in a situation where you have to experiment and completely put in values by yourself. This could typically happen if it's a custom decoder put in by, let's say, a model train store or your friend or yourself. Right. The other thing you have to be aware of is when you're doing these things, it should be the only locomotive on the track, because otherwise you risk programming all the locomotives on your layout, and that is not the intent. You should also make sure that you have it on a track that's safe. So somewhere where it suddenly, or if the locomotive suddenly speeds off, it won't hurt it. So as you can see here, my track ends on the table. So if it goes backwards, I'm okay. I'm a little brave, so actually if it goes forwards, it will fall off the table. But it will fall into my lap. Still, I could break something. So we need to do 3 things. We first need to see if we can connect to the locomotive. Then we need to see if we can change the address. And then we need to see if we can reset the locomotive. So there's a lot of experimentation here. I have my mobile station here. The first thing we remember, the first thing we need to do is to find an empty spot on the mobile station. So we hit the locomotive button till we find a place where it says no loco. Remember, you can also use shift and the knob, and then you can find a spot. When we're here, we can hit the shift and then the locomotive, and then we go into locomotive configuration. We get into a locomotive menu. We're going to use the buttons here on the side to scroll down. We want to enter manually, so we press on the button next to enter manually. And we wanted to do it as DCC, so we scroll down again. It says DCC here. And now we can enter the address. Now remember from the manual it said it was address 3. And as a good tip, usually it's always address 3. All manufacturers seem to do this, and it seems to be the industry standard. It's address 3, but it could be another address as well. So we can use the button over here next to the minus and the button over here to change the address. We can also hit shift knob and change faster. But this is address 3. Okay. We have a check mark down here. We are satisfied with this. We hit the button next to the check mark. I don't care about what it's named right now because we may have to do this a lot of times. I'm just going to accept. I don't care what symbol. I'm just going to choose one. So here we have the locomotive. So as you see how it comes up here, it has a name, it has the symbol we gave it, and then it has a lot of functions. If I hit shift, you can actually see you can get to all the other functions, and when you chose DCC, it already pre-filled up till function 28. Of course, it has only the numbers because it doesn't know what's on that particular locomotive. All right, so Now we need to see if the locomotive reacts to what we're doing on the mobile station. Typically there's two things you want to try. One is to turn light on, and the other one is to see if it can move. Always start with the light, because in case that when you try to move it, it actually runs off the track, you need to be ready for that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, and we have the locomotive down there, is hit the light button. I know the locomotive is a little out of focus, but I hope you can still somewhat see it. I hit the button up here next to the light, and if you saw, the light actually turned off. You see, the light is, oh, it turned on, sorry. I press the button again, it turns off. I press the button again, it turns on. So great, we actually have contact with the locomotive, and the mobile station can talk to it. So we are already very, very, very happy. Next thing we do is use the knob and see if we can move it. Remember, only turn slightly because we don't want it to speed away. So I'm gonna go slightly forward, and you see the locomotive actually moves. Most excellent. Cool. I press the button, so we change direction and see if it moves the other way. Yes, it does. This actually means we already have quite some success, because now we can actually operate the locomotive with the mobile station. Now we need to get more advanced. Well, actually, let's talk about what if this didn't work. Well, then you have to start experimenting with addresses, especially if there's no help in the manual. Let me go to another free spot here. So now here's a free spot. Let's try and go into the menu again. There is also a function down here that's called find. What it actually will do is the mobile station will try different addresses out there. Now for DCC, there can be a lot of addresses, so this can take some time, but let's still try it anyways, just to see what happens. I hit find. It's finding MFX locomotive. It's not what we're looking for, and there's no MFX locomotive on there. Now it's looking for DCC. Oh, I think it found it. However, it says, but the address already exists, which is true because we just added it manually. However, I will be brave and also add another locomotive. So I hit yes. And what you can see here is it comes up in the display and says DCC-3. So it actually did find a locomotive on address 3. If I hit the shift, I can actually get to other functions as well. It doesn't have the nice numbering. We can also try here to see if we can control the train. I'm first going to try the light. It actually has light on. I'll try and do light on, light off. So now it's off, it's on, it's actually red, it's hard to see. I will do it with the headlights instead, so I'll change directions. Now you can better see it. So it's white, I turn it off, I turn it on. So it actually does work. So as you can see, the find also works. All right, however, we're gonna do it through the manual. So I'm gonna do shift locomotive, and I'm gonna remove this loco. Yes, I wanted to remove it. I'm gonna go back to the other locomotive I had. That's this one here, our ABC locomotive. Now the next thing we want to do is figure out how to change the address, because I do not want address 3. Why don't I want address 3? Because remember, that's the industry standard for the default. So if I come with a new locomotive, it by default was 3. So I need to give it another address. You can look in the manual. There's probably a CV value that can be changed, and it can change it. Usually the first thing I do is though see if the mobile station can do it automatically. So I hit shift and the locomotive. We go into the change loco. We see here there's something for the address. Okay, here's the address. I'm just gonna set a random address. So 24 sounds like a good address. I use the knob for that. You can also use the buttons here next to plus and minus. I hit check mark. I don't know if you could hear it. The locomotive gave some ticks and it blinked with the light. So that actually means the decoder is doing something. It's actually receiving whatever the mobile station is sending to it. So this is something we need to be aware of. We need to watch the locomotive and see if something happens. There's usually some kind of indication of whether or not it receives the information. Typically either light will blink, If the light is on, it might go off and then on. If the light is off, it might blink to go on and then off. The small ticks you heard was actually the locomotive just moving just a slightly bit forward and backwards. That can also be a sign that it actually receives some data from the mobile station. So we need to get to know our locomotive, so watch out for these things, all right? So we set the address, we go back out. The first thing I do again, remember always do light first. I press the light, it works. Awesome. I can turn it on and off, on, off. I use the knob down here to see if we can change the speed. It actually moves, excellent. We change direction, we see it can move backwards as well. Yes, we're all good. So now we actually have even more success. We can get to the locomotive and we can change the address, and we know how. Okay, the last thing I want to do is actually to see if I can figure out how to reset it. Remember from the manual, and this is a good tip, typically industry standard, especially for DCCs, is in CV8, you need to put in the value 8. All right, so let's try that. We hit Shift, the locomotive, we come into Configure Locomotive. There's a nice little thing here, Program CV. So CVs are actually values you can give to the decoder. This could be the top speed, minimum speed, braking distance, and so on, right? But it also has a reset. So let's hit that button. I want to choose which CV address to change. Again, I can use the plus and minus. Which address I want to change, I can use the knob as well. I want to change the number 8. Okay, I hit that one. It actually goes out to the Loco and reads it. I don't know if you heard it, but it gave some ticking. It actually also blinked on the locomotive, so good, we got something. It returns the value 145. What we need to do is put in the value 8. So let's find the value 8 here. Okay. And now I need to hit the check mark. I'm going to do that off camera because we really want to observe what happens. So I'm going to hit the check mark now. Okay, it gave one blink and one little tick. Okay, remember from the manual also that we should hit stop. We got that hint from when we looked at the old Märklin decoder. So I'm going to hit stop. I need to do that for at least 5 to 10 seconds because there's a capacitor in there. I'm patient, I'm waiting. That should be it. Let's go out of stop mode again. Okay, so now the locomotive is reset. What does that mean? Well, remember I programmed this one as address 3. Sorry, we initially did address 3, then we changed to another address. I don't remember what address it was. I can go in and check. That was actually address 24, so now I'm on address 24. When I hit the light button, nothing happens, exactly as expected, because I have reset the locomotive, so now I can't talk to it. What I recommend you do now is actually delete the locomotive. So we hit Shift Loco, we go down, we remove the locomotive, yes, and we add it again manually, enter manually, DCC, now it's address 3 again. I'm not caring about this yet, excellent. Now we have it again as address 3, I test the light, I do it off camera, lights on, lights off. Excellent, so now we actually succeeded in resetting the locomotive as well. So now we have all the elements to comfortably go ahead and set all the parameters we need for this locomotive. I know how to get to it, how to make the Mobile Station 2 actually communicate with it. I know how to change the address, and I know how to reset. Now the first thing I will do now is write down what I did, because you may need it in the future. Either if you have to reset the locomotive, change the address, or anything like that. How did you do this? Write it down. The other good thing is also other locomotives that are either similar or from the same manufacturer, you can do the same thing with. So that means the next Roco locomotive I buy with a modern decoder, because remember this is a modern decoder I tried on, the old decoders might behave differently. Now I know how to do it, I don't need to do the experimentation. Now I'm done with my experimentation. I want to finalize the setup in the mobile station. So we grab the mobile station again. The first thing I want to do is I actually want to change the name. I hit Shift Loco, I hit Change Loco, I go into Name. Here I can change the name. The easiest way to do this is using the keyboard up here. So I choose the keyboard here. So this was actually a locomotive from the MRCE leasing company. So I want to put that in. I use Shift and the knob. So yes, it's the first letter I want is M. I hit Shift and then press it. And then you can see the M becomes permanent. I go to the R as well. MRCE. I can find a space somewhere. Where do we have a space? That's after the numbers. Here's a space. And the prototype ID is 193. And then it was dash 875. So let me put that in. Where's the dash? Oh, I just passed the dash there. And then 875. Excellent. I like this name. I hit the check mark. I can go out and see, yes, this is actually my locomotive now. I want to change the symbol. I go into the change loco again. I scroll down. I want to change the loco symbol. Remember, the mobile station don't have that many to choose from. Is there anything I like better? Usually I scroll through the entire list. Actually, I do like this one, so let me choose this one. So, much more happy. Now, the last thing we want to do is to change the function keys. So it actually will work more as intended and show the symbols that we would like to have on there. So we go back to the manual. All right, we have the manual here. Here we have all the functions, and as you see, it goes all the way down to 24. Okay, so there's lots of functions to enter. I'll just show you a couple here, and then you get the idea. So F1, driving noise, which is the engine, we definitely want that. So I would like to change the symbol for that one. The first thing I do though is let me just try and turn it on and see if something happens down there. Since it's only sound, I don't need to show it to you. And you can hear it actually turns on. Notice another thing, the key is actually permanently on. By default, the function keys are permanently on. I can turn it off again. It'll take a little while for the decoder to actually go through its motions and turn off the sound. So let's add the functions. We hit Shift and the locomotive. We go to the change locomotive. We scroll down. We find the loco functions. We go in here. Now we can configure the functions. The first one I wanted to configure was F1, which was the engine sound. So I hit F1. As you can see, there's a set of predefined symbols in here. We hit Shift and we turn the knob and we can look at all of them. There's not that many, and unfortunately you cannot customize them. So you have to choose from what you see on the screen here. This was the engine sound, so typically what I would use is the speaker, and I believe that's what Märklin also does. So I choose the speaker. I can hit the check mark here. Up here on the top ones here next to temp, endless, continuous, I can choose whether or not it needs to be, let's see, say a continuous action or a temporary action. Continuous means that when I press it, it will start it and keep being lit until I press it again and it goes off, which fits with the sound function. It will also fit with going into a shunting mode, for example. The temporary I'll typically use for, let's say, horns and that kind of stuff. Okay, so it's continuous. I'm happy with that. Actually, let me just show you. I can change it. I hit the button next to it. Also here, I can choose between it. So it's a continuous. I'm happy with that. Let me just say that's enough for now. So I hit the check mark. Okay, and go out of the menu. And now we can try it out. I hit the button next to the symbol. Well, please do notice the symbol has changed, right? So I click that one. The sound works. I'm gonna click it off. The decoder is gonna continue in the background because that's what it does with the engine sound, but I can click it on and off like that. So as not to keep you waiting on the video, I just off camera waited till the engine sound stopped. So now I want to look at adding some more functions. So we go back to our manual. I find here F2, F3, so that's train horn high, long, that's F2. F3 is train horn deep, long. The first thing I always do is I try it out before I program it, so just to see what happens. So I press the F2, it stays in. I can press it again and it stops. So that's good to know. So that means that it will actually, if I keep it pressed, if I wanted to, it will continue doing the horn. I can do the same thing for the other one. Okay. I bet that if you do a short one, it will also work, but let's try it out. So we hit Shift Locomotive again. We hit Change Locomotive. I scroll down till I find the Loco functions. I hit F2 in this case. There is actually a symbol for a horn, so I find that one with the shift knob. Here I hit that one. I want to try and do this as a temporary. I like it when I can just press and it stops again. So yes, I want this as temporary. I hit the check mark. Do I want to edit more? Let me just add the next horn as well. So I hit this one over here with more. Okay, I hit F3. This is also a horn. Okay, so I go to that horn. Oh, that was a little too long. Oh no, it's good. Then I hit the check mark. This time I want to try and do it so it's on by default for, let's say, 5 or 6 seconds. So I can use the plus and minuses here to change. So it's on continuous, so it actually means the mobile station will do this continuously for 6 seconds when you just press it. I hit the check mark. I say, is it complete? Yes. Okay. I go out of the menus. We see we have the horns. I'm just going to press the first one. Remember, this is set for temporary, so just a short press. And you can hear it actually went through its motions and stopped. The next one is going to be going on for 6 seconds. Let's try that. Okay, that also worked. And as you saw, I just pressed it once and then it actually did change. Now let's go back to the cheat sheet and see what else we got. So F6 is interesting. That's shunting gear and shunting lights. It actually means it goes into a different mode. So let's try that one as well. So that's F6. Actually, when you do this, let's just look at the locomotive. You see it's just, it has no lights on. If I change the speed, you will see it will actually accelerate slowly. Okay, I pause it again. What it actually will do when you go in the shunting mode here is that will actually, you see it automatically turned on the light. In the other end, it also has the light on, so it has shunting lights on automatically. If I turn the knob here, you will see it will actually be able to control it more directly. You see it stops immediately, so it ignores whatever parameters are in there for slowly starting and slowly stopping. Okay, let's try and configure that one. We hit Shift Locomotive, change Locomotive. We scroll down, we find Loco functions. We choose F6, which is over here. For that one, that's actually what Märklin uses as symbol for the turtle. I also call it turtle mode. I do that. It's a continuous one. We want it to be on till it turns off again. Excellent. Cool. We go out and now we got the turtle mode. So when I press the turtle, you'll see it turns on the light, goes in shunting mode. I press it again. So I do this here. You see it's actually lights off. Okay, now let's try and do a function that's on the next page of functions. So this time here there's F12. Remember how to get to F12. You hit Shift and then you can see the numbers here. We try and hit the 12. You see, even though the mobile station thinks it's continuous, it was actually a very brief horn. So I'm going to turn it off again. I'm going to go into Shift Loco. I'm going to scroll down. Oh, sorry. We need to go into Change Loco and then Loco Functions. I hit Shift and then you see it comes up here so I can hit it. So it's F12. This was also a horn. We have lots of horns here. That's this one. I hit the check mark. It's not a continuous one, it's a temporary one. So I say that, I hit check mark. That's all I wanted to do. Okay, so I go out of the menu, I hit Shift, and then I can get to it. Excellent. Now if you wanted to program even more functions at higher numbers, remember if I hold Shift in, you see it goes to the next set. If I release and then press it in again, then it goes to the next set again. I can release and press again. If you do it slowly, then it's easier to find your way around in these. As you can see, I have added more functions now. The typical motion I go through is first before I assign the symbol, so basically where it has the F and number, I try it out first. I read the manual and see what is the function supposed to do, so I do know that. I consider whether or not it needs to be continuous, timed or endless, and then I enter the locomotive functions. And it's quite a lot of work to do this. As you see, I've only done the first page. You can also, and I didn't do anything on the next pages, so it takes quite some time to do all of this. But when you've gone through the motions, you basically have a fully functional locomotive. It's configured as you want with the correct name, the correct symbol. We know how to change the address. We actually also made sure we had an address that didn't conflict with other locomotives on the track. So do remember, for the addressing, you need to have a scheme for what is the addresses. I suggest making a list of addresses of locomotives you have so you don't end up with a conflict. And then finally we added the functions so it makes it more usable and easy to figure out. So we got a fully functional locomotive. Yippee!